I used to live next door to my 89-year-old landlady, a kind, quiet woman who spent her days tending to her beloved garden. It was the 1980s in a peaceful Chinese neighborhood where life moved slowly and routines were a comfort. Every afternoon, without fail, at exactly 5 p.m., she would sweep the stone walkway in her garden. The soft swish of her stick broom became a familiar sound. But one evening, something changed. I came home and found her sitting in her garden, broom in hand, weeping softly. It was a sight that unsettled me because, for as long as I had known her, she had always been so calm, so composed. I walked toward her and sat beside her. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes filled with sorrow, her voice trembling as she speaks. "I just realized. Soon, I am going to die. And I can't take my garden with me." I squeezed her hand, unsure of what to say. In that moment, the weight of her realization hung in the air, as heavy as the gathering dusk. "Don't you worry," I told her. "I'm certain that a part of you will remain in this garden." A couple of weeks later, she passed away, peacefully in her sleep. Her house next door remained empty, and her beloved garden, once full of life, began to wilt. But something lingered there. You could feel it in the air, a strange emptiness, an unsettling silence that replaced the once comforting routine. And then, one evening, as I returned home after a long day at work, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of sweeping, the soft swish of the broom brushing against the stone path. But no one was there. For a moment, I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, but the sound, it was so clear. I knew what it was. I had heard it every afternoon at 5 p.m. for years. At first, I tried to ignore it, brushing it off as the wind, or perhaps my mind playing tricks on me. But as the days passed, the sound returned. Every evening, at exactly 5 p.m., the broom's rhythmic swish became a haunting reminder of her presence. It was as if she was still there, hidden among the shadows, tending to her garden as she always had. The sound didn't stop. It grew louder, more deliberate, as though she was still working, still caring for the garden she loved so much. I couldn't take it anymore. One night, I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The night air was too still, too quiet, but the sound of sweeping, it was unmistakable. It was coming from the heart of the garden. My legs trembled as I moved closer, the sound growing louder with every step. My hand shook as I raised the flashlight, casting the beam onto the stone path where Mrs. Evans had always swept. And then, I saw it. I hired a gardener to tend to the garden, hoping to quiet whatever was happening. He arrived the following afternoon, ready to bring order to the wilderness. But something went wrong. He stopped abruptly, dropping his shears as his eyes darted around. He looked at the spot where she had always swept, his face going pale. And then, without a word, he ran, fleeing the garden as though he had seen something I couldn't. I never saw the gardener again, and no one else would come near the house. But every evening, at 5 p.m., the sound returns, the soft, familiar swish of the broom, brushing against the stones. Mrs. Evans is still there, tending to her garden, even in death.